But as always, my love letter to the Prime Minister that you get used to at the start of each and every show. By this time next week, there's probably going to be, the Prime Minister will have called an election. Now, yes, that means we've got the next few days of will he, won't he, but generally speaking, the reason they call an election on Sundays is because it's the biggest TV ratings for the 6 p.m. news, it's the biggest newspaper day. That's changed a little over the years, but of course, it means that we will be in the best season of all, and that is election season. The opportunity for you to be making the decisions, for you to be in charge of where the country goes, and all of that, of course, starts with the Prime Minister visiting the Governor-General. Remember, the hand-picked Governor-General that now is paid even more than he is. Her salary now, what, $700,000? OK, well, he's paid $600,000. And how many pay rises here in Bateman's Bay in the past 3 years? That's what I would have thought. Remember, they got 3 in the past since the election. Now, in terms of prospective dates, by this time next week, if an election is called, we'll be all in, all the data, we'll do all of the full coverage. That will be because the election will be on Saturday, the 5th of April. If for whatever reason it's all delayed for another week, the most likely one before we start getting into school holidays, public holidays, all the rest of it, will be April the 12th. But he absolutely has to have it, whether he wants to or not. And wait till I show you some poll numbers, which might mean he might want to go and hide or pretend to have COVID for another week. Because the 17th of May looks like it is obviously the last time that he should be getting up and into it. Now, as always, whenever you pick a day, there are people who say that's the wrong day because it's important to my community or my availability or my ability to vote. And just adding a little bit more insult to injury, it looks like that will be Passover for the Jewish community in Australia. And that community has said that they don't want the 5th to be the date. But of course, the great difference between elections in the past and now is like half of people vote early. So even if it's, you know, the first Saturday of the school holidays, the point is lots of people, they get up and vote early. In fact, can I show you this? Which is, have a look at one of the screens if you're in the room, or just keep looking at what you're looking at right now at home. Have a look at this. This is the total number of people who voted early in the last federal election. 7.3 million people, or 42% of people, voted before election day. Previously, that was about 3, almost 4 million in the 2019. So, generally speaking, in Australia, if you want to play, you know, soothsayer, all the rest of it, if there's more early votes, then generally speaking, obviously people have made their mind up, and generally that is about getting rid of a government. So we'll watch this day to day and see whether certain seats like Gilmore, which of course is in and around this area, which is very tight, if there's early votes, what can you read into it? And as you know, I love the data. We'll get nice, deep and dirty because we know that you're interested in it because it's about the future of our country. Also, I just want to get in with all of this because in a week's time there'll be all this other information floating around, that there is a very significant number, literally hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be voting for the first time. And no, they weren't all people who joined the country in the past 2 weeks, thanks to Tony Burke. Of course, it's a collection of people over the past 3 years who have become 18. I think we have one in the room right now. That's OK. We'll tell you how to fill out your form exactly in the order it should be filled out. No. But also, there are hundreds of thousands of people, of course, that have come to the country. It's a 4-year process for citizenship, but that means this. 18 million people will be voting in this upcoming election. There'll be a new electorate, as well as 2 existing seats that get the hive-ho. There'll be 500,000 households which have moved from where they did at the last election, meaning that perhaps Super Lefty from Victoria has now moved up to, you know, Super National Party area in country Queensland. Obviously, they bring their politics with them. Overall, you need to know that Australian voters are older because we're all 3 years older than the previous one, but there's also more of us than ever before. There's a very significant growth in the number of people in Western Australia. So all of this is going to be fascinating to see in the election. And again, when we're just trying to work out what's going to happen at the election, and I'm not going to be a happy talk person, I'm not going to sit there each and every day and say, gonna happen, gonna happen, gonna happen, because what's the lesson we learnt in 2019? When all the yibba yabba was, oh, Bill Shorten, next Prime Minister of Australia. What did we say? Nothing's inevitable. Nothing is inevitable. It doesn't matter what the polls say today, what the bookies say tomorrow, it doesn't matter what your best mate over the fence, you will decide what's going to happen, okay? Not just with your first preference, but with your second preference as well. Your number 2 is as important as your number 1, as always. But it is certainly something you have to think about if you're going to stray away from major party voting, about how quickly you get back to a choice of someone to govern, all right? We can all hide behind, they're all terrible. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not, but at some point in time, a choice has to be made. There is a big fault line in the Australian electorate that we will be discussing a lot between now and election day. There are just as many people under the age of 50 as over the age of 50 on the electoral roll, okay? There is basically 50-50, slightly more, but 50-50 in terms of men and women. But the opinion polls are showing us blokes are heading in a direction and ladies are heading in a different one. So there'll be certain seats with more women, more men, and that'll again give us an idea of what's happening. Right now, latest opinion poll that came through in the Turnbull Times, otherwise known as The Guardian, was that when it comes to blokes, they're leaning a little more towards the Liberal Party. That's the blue squiggly line of DNA, the Labor Party. These little sort of ups or downs, like 1 to 2 points, okay? But essentially, that's been the way it's been for a little while. However, when it comes to female voters, you'll see a significant reversal of fortune here, where the Labor Party ends up being slightly in front. Now, if I can ask our control room back at Sky News, that grey line at the bottom, can we go back to the male figure as well? You can see there between 5 and 10% of undecideds in females and less than 5% of undecideds in males. So it's all really tight. We're looking for the numbers. It's all kind of 50-50, where 100 people this way, 1,000 people that way is going to have an obvious effect. Now, that gender gap is really important, because when we talk about an election, who sways an election, particularly females 35 to 55. Well, have a look at this. There are 7,500 more female voters than male voters in the seat of Kooyong. So if they're leaning away from the Liberal Party and there's a TLMP, that's how you start to see the predictions of this seat's going to move this way, this is not going to move that way. Now, you've all lived a life and you all know this information, but I wanted everyone to see, in the room and at home, that there are very significant. So say the seat of Boothby in South Australia, one where the Liberal Party would like to win it, Nicole Flint. She'd be a fantastic member of Parliament. I don't know if you would agree or not, but I think she's a ripper. Well, she's got work to do when there's that sort of gender imbalance.